We are live here on a Monday. A Titans loss, another Titans loss. A valiant effort by the Tennessee Titans, but they come up short against the Colts yet again in Indianapolis. Going to have a unique show today because we're making history, A to Z sports history. I've never done a show with one Easton Freeze as Sam's under the weather and Austin is traveling. Here we are. So it's probably not under good conditions of another Titans loss, but
what merry tidings to be meeting for the first time, Zach.
Hey, but we don't decide that, Easton, right? Brian Callahan and crew decide that, and Jeffrey Simmons on the defensive side of the ball and crew decide that. So we've got a packed show for you today. We are going to do our best to break this thing down, whatever that was that we saw yesterday, including talking about Jeffrey Simmons and that run defense, or Mo Alie-Cox on that run defense for the Colts. So we'll touch on that, and who was to blame for that performance as Jonathan Taylor ran train all across Indianapolis.
He did what?
Multiple touchdowns that he hadn't done since 2021. The old Louise. Jonathan Taylor, how he earned the contract Jonathan Taylor. Well, so we'll talk about that disaster. We'll also ask a question. Are you buying or selling the fight that was the Titans falling short of a W, or at least a tie there at the end as the Colts close things out? And then we got the age game. I will present a person to Easton to see if that particular person can be named on his age. Let's see if Easton can get in the win column on our age game. So a lot to get to on Monday's show. Easton, welcome in. It's exciting stuff. First time for everything. So it's going to be a good show.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Zach. Good morning to everybody in the comments. Help us out before we get started today. Hit that like button on Facebook, on YouTube. Like the show. Help us out. A day without Austin is a rare day here on the morning show. So if you're somebody that just can't stand Austin, today's a great day for you. And you get Zach and I instead. We want to hear from you guys in the comments as well. Already seeing Joshua, Demario, Daniel, Brandon, James, Darren, T, and others. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on what was a tale of two halves for the Titans yesterday. And what does the second half really mean is going to be the key for us today. What do we make of a Titans near comeback, as well as that run defense for the second time this year has been historically bad? What do we make of that as well? So a couple of interesting topics to get into here, Zach.
Yep, absolutely. Let's officially get things started. I am Zach Bingham. He is Easton Freeze. This is A to Z Sports. Welcome on in. We are brought to you by BetMGM. We are powered by BetMGM. We love BetMGM. I had one hell of a betting weekend. So thank you to BetMGM for a big-time parlay that was hit. We always love BetMGM. So make sure you download the app today and use the promo code ATOZ Sports. Also, we're going to touch on a moment's peace and a momentpeace.com/Christmas. Get your Christmas gifts. It is December 23rd. That's a moment's peace. Nobody trashes Tennessee.com. And also Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans, FBHP.com/A to Z is where to go get your health plan. And the Bone and Joint Institute down there in Franklin. They have been a friend of the show for some time. If you are injured, make sure you visit the Bone and Joint Institute and Wilson County Hyundai. They are the presenter of our end of show topic, which is the age game. That is WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Easton, welcome on in. The Tennessee Titans, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever you want to look at if you're looking at the draft, 30-38, they fall yet again to now 3-12. Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson, he only threw the ball 11 times and completed 7, and they had 38 points. Now, you can let that sink in. That's one way to win, and that is an interesting way to win for the Indianapolis Colts.
I saw yesterday it's the first time anyone's won that way since the 70s. So
Anthony Richardson would be the one to do it, right?
That's right.
Against the Titans. So the Titans fall short as they got down big early. Second half, they mounted a comeback. But let's talk about why they got into the hole that they did. It was 24-7 at halftime. You're sitting there scratching your head. You're trying to think why, how. Well, you just got to look at number 28, Jonathan Taylor, 29 carries, 218 yards, and 3 touchdowns, including a long 70-yard gallop to the end zone. That was just part of the rushing attack. They ended the day, they being the Indianapolis Colts, 50 carries, 335, and 4 touchdowns, an average of 6.7 yards per carry. Let's talk to the leader of the Titans defense, who helped or did not help that run defense get gashed by the Indianapolis Colts. Jeffrey Simmons, after the game, on the run defense of the Titans, trying to prevent what we saw.
I watched the tape, but shit, we was movement and they were running a lot of gap scheme. It was like deja vu all over again, just like when we played Washington. I mean, it was the same shit. I mean, when we turn on that tape, it's gonna be guys misfit, I'm sure. Not one time we got to watch the tape, but I don't think they ran really duo or nothing like that. When they did do it, it was like 3-1 quarterback sneak or something like that. But at the end of the day, when you talk about stopping the run, it's not just on the defensive line. When they run a gap scheme, everyone on defense got to be where they're supposed to be, and we got to fit correctly, and that's what it is. I mean, it's not like they had many exotic runs. You know, when we look at how many rushing yards they had, yeah, first thing we're going to say the defensive line. But like I said, when gap changes, I mean, guys in a different gap. Now, back in, the linebackers got to be where they're supposed to be. DBs got to be where they're supposed to be. They take all 11 to stop the run. So I think at the end of the day, I think we misfit a lot of their runs. It wasn't like they just knocking us off the ball. There was a lot of freaking gap scheme, and quite frankly, they had 3 big explosive runs. That's why it looked like he did. I think Jonathan Taylor at one point had like 7 rush for like 112, and that 2 big explosive run he had. So at the end of the day, we got to know what the team doing. We got to adjust. We got to know where to be at and have to be there, especially in a situation like that where we knew they were finna run the ball. We knew that quarterback was gonna run the ball. We got to be able to be where we're supposed to be.
Do y'all have problems sometimes?
Woo. There's a lot to unpack there from Big Jeff Simmons. I think the one thing that stands out that he said was, it's not just the defensive line, it's everyone else, right? I don't think that the defensive line wanted to take all of the credit or lack thereof for Jonathan Taylor's field day and the Colts field day as they built a lead. And we all know, Easton, that this Titans team is not built to come back and put up a bunch of points and have this great offense that can gallop at any point. What was your thought on the Titans' run defense against Jonathan Taylor that got them into the hole that they did?
Yeah, I mean, historically bad. And we watched that Washington game a couple of weeks ago thinking, holy cow, you can't get much worse than that. And the Titans somehow find a way to be significantly worse than that. 2 games this year now where what has otherwise been their greatest strength on defense, stopping the run, has completely flipped a switch and been the reason they lose the game more so than not. It's astonishing how just the whip, like I'm trying to find something that another team in the league does so well and so badly given the week, and I can't think of something. And I think the answer we got from Jeff there is really insightful to kind of put my nerd cap on for a moment. He talked about the parallels you saw in all the gap scheme that they ran, which is similar to what Washington did to kill them a couple weeks ago. And talking to some buddies of mine who are frankly smarter than me when it comes to X's and O's, I think that the way that this Denard Wilson defense is designed, the weakness is a strong gap scheme. And the reason why, it can seem like a player kind of shrugging off responsibility, the way that Jeffrey Simmons sat there and talked about how it's not all on the defensive line. It really isn't all on the defensive line in this one, because the way that the Denard Wilson defense is set up, it relies heavily on the linebackers, and it's built around press man coverage on the outside. And so when you run press man against zone, people hear zone scheme, gap scheme. What does this mean running? Gap scheme is simply the offense trying to pick a gap, the A gap, the B gap, the C gap, and block to open that specific gap, right? It is a gap scheme. You're looking for one specific hole. And so what gap scheme does is it takes out, if you execute it correctly, it takes away the defensive line by opening up a specific gap and forcing your secondary to make a play, forcing the linebackers or the safeties or the corners to hit a hole. And when you play press man and you've got all your guys in the secondary up on a guy and you got the safeties deep to prevent stuff over the top, you're not going to have the corners crash on the ball because they're up on the line of scrimmage away from the play. And you have the safeties back deep. And then you see, like on that big scamper from Jonathan Taylor, when Amani Hooker comes flying down and takes a really atrocious angle, you force them into conflict there, and it forces them into making a difficult play. And so that's part of the reason why all of that nerd talk culminates in me wondering why the defense can't see that. Like, if I can see that, and if my friends that we just grind tape for fun and we have, like, you know, other jobs like in media or else in the world, why can't the Titans see that and make adjustments for that? Is it a personnel thing? I mean, I do give the Titans a little bit of grace just because I do think this Denard Wilson defense is predicated, like the skeleton key of it is good linebacker play. And you can kind of trace this season's defensive woes back to Ernest Jones no longer being on this team. You've lost him, and then all the other guys have gotten hurt. Like, you're dealing with a banged up Kenneth Murray. Jack Gibbons is gone. They're like on linebacker 5, 6, and 7 right now, and it's showing in a big way. But I think it's time that we start asking some serious questions about Denard Wilson and the way that he deploys his players. I mean, you want to talk about confusing, Zach? I don't know if you noticed this. Right before Jonathan Taylor's big run, it was the break in between the first quarter and the second quarter. The Titans had a drive that spanned that TV timeout. And so the defense was on the sideline, not just for that Titans drive, but also for that TV timeout between quarters. And then they go back out there, and the Colts the only 4 plays of that drive, because on the 4th play was when Jonathan Taylor scored the touchdown. Jeff Simmons isn't out there. He's on the sideline continuing to rest after he had an entire Titans drive and the quarter break to rest. Sweat is out because he got poked in the eye and he can't see. And so no Sweat, no Simmons. They get run, and the 4th run is a touchdown. What are we doing? I have a lot of serious questions about the way that they deploy their players and the game plan that this team is implementing on defense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about. Let's get the chat involved real quick, because the reason why the Titans lost was because of their run defense, singularly, because
100%.
They don't get into the hole that they got into, that they start chopping away in the second half and they fall short. You're going to fall short when you're down.
A bad quarterback throw the ball 7 times or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's not the makeup and a recipe to win, right?
No.
I always say, and you saw this a lot in college football over the weekend, there is a recipe to win and there is a recipe to lose. SMU, recipe to lose. Indiana, recipe to lose. I mean, Clemson, recipe to lose. Tennessee on Saturday night, recipe to lose. You cannot do the things that were done and expect to win. And similarly, the Titans had the recipe to lose on Sunday to, I wouldn't say a far superior team.
No.
The Colts are better than the Titans. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah.
But you can play the game correctly to give your worst team a fighting chance, or a puncher's chance, as they say, at the end. And that was not afforded them. So let's get into a question. Who is the most to blame for the repeat run defense disaster, as we saw the Indianapolis Colts run for 335 yards, 4 touchdowns off of 50 carries? They knew what they were going to do, and they did it, right?
I mean, that's a game plan you're watching in black and white on your tube TV, man.
Right?
That's crazy.
So who is most to blame? But first, do want to talk about our great sponsors, including FBHP.com. That is Farm Bureau Health Plans of Tennessee. 75 years they've been in business, 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. Go online and visit Farm Bureau Health Plans of Tennessee at FBHP.com/ATOZ. You can get a health assessment, then you get a quote. It's very easy. and they're individualized for you and your family, whether it's you you singularly or whether you've got a wife and kids, husband and kids, doesn't matter. You can find that quote and then you decide. It's great coverage. We've been a partner with Farm Bureau Health Plans for a number of years. You can partner with them individually too. That's fbhp.com/ATOZ.
We're also brought to you by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. Sign up today using our bonus code ATOZ Sports to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't cash. So whether or not you are watching the game at Nissan Stadium or at your favorite Music City sports bar, you can always get in on the action with the BetMGM app right in the palm of your hand. The best parlay selection, odds boost specials, and more over there at BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas.
A to Z Sports, again, powered by BetMGM. The question we asked, who is most to blame for repeat run defense disasters? I think I want to touch on yesterday's game and some of the reasoning behind that disaster.
Okay.
But, Louis says the Colts are mathematically alive. Maybe that was due to their try or, will to win that game. That's the bad part. They aren't great from Darren.
They're a below average team in the league. They are.
There's Clownahan. We got our first Clownahan of the day, which is always hilarious. Callahan going straight to the head coach, going to Wilson, the defensive coordinator, the coaches, obviously Wilson from King JP, Callahan from Steven, the coach from Vanessa, the players, their effort was bad. That's from Big Ten Jeff, who we know does watch a lot of Colts games. Linebackers, that goes to your point, Easton, of maybe singularly or conceptually, I would say, of who runs that defense. Denard from Chef Ran. Let's see. Wilson is to blame. All the coaches need the blame. It's horrific from Corey, the linebackers, every single person on D not executing. Wilson, unfortunately. So we've got, I think the majority is on the coaching staff, which includes Wilson and also the head coach, Brian Callahan.
Right.
Is there a singular place that you blame the run game, the run defense on of that horrific performance yesterday?
Yeah, it's always a blame pie, so it's not 100% on one person. But the largest slice of that pie for me is Denard Wilson. I wish that he was going to the podium today to answer some of these questions. I guess we'll have to ask Callahan by proxy. The reason why I blame him more than Callahan, and ultimately, when a coach under the head coach is not doing a thing well, it is a reflection of the head coach as well, for sure. So Callahan is not free of blame here. The reason why I do put more blame on Denard is because, my understanding all season has been that Brian Callahan essentially lets Denard Wilson be the head coach of the defense. He gives him serious autonomy in terms of game planning, in terms of the way that he deploys his personnel. And maybe the gripe is he shouldn't be doing that anymore. Maybe he should say, this is too much for you right now. We need to pull back on the number of responsibilities you have. But my understanding is that this is a Denard Wilson brainchild. And I think folks that have listened to me know that I am a blame the players before blame the coaches guy, because the coaches can't do the playing for the players. And oftentimes execution is the problem. And so I think watching the game, watching the tape is important when you're trying to assign blame, to look at, okay, from a scheme standpoint, what opportunities were created for players? And then were those opportunities taken? And so the reason why I blame the coaches in this instance is because, yes, the players out there are bad. They are not executing at a high level. But the situations they're being put into that I see, talking about how this gap scheme continues to absolutely kill the Titans when teams run it effectively, the inability of the Titans defense to adjust to that style of running, that falls on the coaching staff, right? Adjustments from a schematic standpoint, putting the players in a position to win and to execute, that falls on the coaching staff. And so if I turned on the tape and I saw, man, these guys were there and they just took horrible angles and they couldn't shed blocks and they got manhandled, I would blame the players. But from what I saw yesterday, I saw guys that were not in position to make plays consistently. And I saw either an inability or an unwillingness from the coaching staff to make an adjustment schematically. And so that's why I have a lot of questions for Denard Wilson, because that falls under his purview. That is what he is doing, rotating guys in and out and aligning them up the way that he is. So for me, it is Denard Wilson, and I think that he needs to give us some good answers this week.
Yeah, I feel like a ton of the pressure, deservingly so, has been on Brian Callahan and Will Levis, right? So
right.
that's been the focal point. Coaching quarterback, head coach and quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
You heard last week Callahan come out, try to defend his players, that they're not soft, which they played some soft ass defense on Sunday.
Right?
I mean, that's Pillsbury Doughboy type stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what else you call it.
Right. He's defending them as like individuals, right? As football players. The execution is where you win and lose games.
Right.
So, I think that this is a telling sign as you kind of look more towards why did they get down? Why did they lose the game? Why did they not know that the Colts were going to run the football? Anthony Richardson can't pass. He like,
right.
If anybody with fantasy football knowledge, damn, and that spans far and wide,
right,
knows that Anthony
some real
Richardson
morons know this out there.
Doesn't get his points from passing touchdowns.
Right.
He gets his points from rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. And he got one, he got one called back, at the end, right? That went to Jonathan Taylor. And so what they're going to do, but they can't stop them. Here is
to your point of a winning game plan. I mean, is it not the most obvious winning game plan for the Colts? Okay, let's make them pass the ball.
It's kind of what the Titans have been doing for the last 7 years with Derrick Henry.
Right. It's exactly what they've been doing.
You know that they're not going to, like, when they really win, they throw the football well. When they win consistently, they've ran the football with Derrick Henry. That's the setup of the Indianapolis Colts offense. The quarterback can't use the tools that he has to their fullest ability. I mean, the dude only attempted 11 passes.
And they scored 38 points. You know how hard that is to do?
Very.
Golly.
So my response, and this is where I think we mentioned it a little bit, but lost sight, is I do think they were greatly impacted by the loss of T'Vondre Sweat.
Oh, I agree. It kind of started when he went out, right? I mean,
like, he is the linchpin of run D. Everybody, I mean, and obviously Jeffrey Simmons is just thrown in there, so I don't want to just gloss over him. But when Sweat, and that was bad. I mean, he literally, they were reporting that he couldn't open his eye, and then they panned to him, and he's got one eye open, and the other one is, there's no, now you're worried about his vision, and I don't know the update on Sweat, but I think that was so impactful on what the defense had schemed up to try to defend. Now, that's their own fault because injuries occur, things happen, so you got to be prepared at all turns, and they were not prepared when Sweat went out. I thought that was the singularly most impactful event of yesterday's game, is the big hog in the middle gets gone and the floodgates get open. And you saw that. So say blame, I kind of blame that injury and all of the surrounding pieces of not being responsible and prepared if, in fact, 98 or 93 aren't out there.
Right. And to the X's and O's talk about a gap scheme. I mean, on paper, the way the Titans defense is designed to be able to run this aggressive press man style of defense and still not get gashed by gap scheme is that you have those guys in the middle, and they're a system breaker. in the sense that when you set up trying to get into the B gap and you've got Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat on the line, you can't double them both. And one of them is going to win their one-on-one, and a gap scheme run that is designed to take the defensive line out of the play and force the linebackers into conflict suddenly is the defensive line impacting the play anyways, because you've got guys that win on the line. And when you don't have them in there winning on the line, whether it's T'Vondre Sweat being out of the game with an eye poke, or again, Jeffrey Simmons just resting on the sideline because the coaches don't want him out there for some godforsaken reason, you get killed in this style of run with this style of defense. As Randy points out in the comments, he thinks, here's the conspiracy: strategic eye poke by the Colts. Just get that guy out there. We will win if T'Vondre Sweat's out of the game. And, I don't think it was strategic, but it was a massive deal because that's when it felt like the floodgates opened for the Colts. I mean, it's not like they opened the game running for 10 yards a clip, right? The first drive, two series and a punt.
Well, so is that an excuse or a reason?
No, it's a reason because, to your point, you lose guys. And, T'Vondre Sweat did come back. He came back before the end of halftime, and the Colts still ran at nearly 10 yards a clip. So the floodgates opened, and even with, and maybe, depth perception, his depth set to 0 on the Madden ratings
that's why I say the impact of, I don't know if you've been poked in the eye before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have contacts. If I take one of my contacts out, I'm done for the day.
Okay.
I can't see. I literally can't see.
Oh no.
And so I can't imagine now you're trying to get your hands where they want to go, but your hands aren't where you think they are, right? And so that's not on Sweat, right? Like, but I did think, it affects one's play. And I felt like he is such, I go back to the linchpin of the run defense.
Right.
I look at that. He is a gap filler.
Yes.
And
physically.
So if that's your concept and that's your scheme, and you mess that up, because he's not the same guy. I mean, he's not, and he wasn't. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was impactful on it. I do want to get to this because I think this is somewhat concerning. Maybe it's truth, but Mo Alie-Cox or Sherlock Holmes and Watson, he was listening in on what was being said across the line and had some interesting words. I'm going to get to that, but first going to tell everybody about T-Dot. Oh, nobody trashes Tennessee except for Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, and the Colts, right? And this is
and the Buckeyes. Throw them in there as well.
This is an ongoing thing. But in all seriousness, we love T-Dot because they do one thing. They keep our streets clean. 88 million pieces of litter on Tennessee's roadways right now. It's a massive problem. And T-Dot spends over $23 million each year cleaning up that litter. The Mountain Dew cans, the dip spitters, the old Bud Light cans on the side of the road, the whatchamacallit packets. That's actually a pretty good candy bar. But when the wrapper's in the trash, not on the side of the road. Right. Visit NobodyTrashesTennessee.com and get involved and see how you can make a difference. That is T-Dot. Nobody trashes Tennessee.
We're also brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Sign up today using our bonus code ATOZ Sports to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't cash. BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas.
A to Z Sports, Mo Alie-Cox. Immediate reaction. I saw this on Instagram yesterday. I was like, I got to pull this for the show. Mm-hmm. He about to run for 300 on us. That is Colts tight end Mo Alie-Cox overhearing what the Titans defense was saying about Jonathan Taylor. Now, truth, honesty, realism, all of those things can be the case, but you never want to hear your opponent or let your opponent know that you're scared to death of the man across the line of scrimmage, which these words, that's a huge advantage for an opposition if that's what they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a lot of questions about this because It came from one athletic reporter in the locker room. There's no video of Mo Alie-Cox saying this. There was no follow-up asking who said it, when in the game. Like, was this in the fourth quarter? Was this if this was said like, before the big Jonathan Taylor run, and it was just a very prescient or maybe just understanding comment from the Titans defensive line that they already knew they were screwed somehow, that's not good. The bottom line is even if you're thinking that kind of thing, you don't say that out loud, and you certainly don't say it loud enough for the other team to hear you say it and then run to their coaches and say, coach. They know they can't stop us in the run. Let's run it 50 times today.
Well,
and then they run
the
it
problem
50
is
times.
the coaches said, hey, we weren't going to throw the ball anyway. Anthony Richardson's the quarterback. I mean, come on. We knew we were going to do this the entire time.
Right.
Just follow the game plan. Get back out there.
Stick to the script. Yeah. So not good. Whether it's true or not, it is easy to believe simply because it is exactly what happened. So whether it is truth or fiction, it's a bad look. It's a bad look.
Well, and then you also have, on top of this, the division rival aspect of it, because they're going to play twice a year next year and the next year and the next year. And I know it's cyclical, like it goes in waves, and sometimes the Colts are bad, sometimes the Titans are bad. They're both kind of bad, but the Titans are far worse. We are going to shift and get to the comeback, or lack thereof fully, but the comeback that was Mason Rudolph and this offense trying valiantly to get back into this game, to tie it up, to possibly win. But I think the lead story and why we led with this was simply because that's the reason why they lost, was because of the run defense. So as we transition and shift to what we're going to talk about now, which is the comeback, I think Brian Callahan, after the game, talks about a lot of different things, because he comes out with his opening statement and says what he says. But this is what he had to say after the game, after that comeback fell short.
Otis' ankle didn't return to the game. We'll see where he's at. Kenneth Murray hit a wrist, did not return. Not probably encouraging for him. Radens had a shoulder, did not return. Hooker had a shoulder, did not return. Pollard's ankle is the same. He did not return, but he's the same as he was before. So nothing different. Obviously disappointed the way that first half got away from us early. Did not play well on either line of scrimmage. Didn't stop the run at all. Didn't run the ball well. That's a recipe to lose against a team that's built to do both. And we didn't do a good enough job. Guys fought. We didn't stop. They kept swinging at it. We had a chance to get the ball back with an 8-point gain in the fourth quarter. And I appreciate the effort and the fight. Ultimately, wasn't enough, but too many things that we didn't do well enough in that game all the way around, myself included. So I'll let you guys go ahead.
Myself included, right? So
Sure.
At least he's taking accountability. I think Brian Callahan has taken accountability for all of these losses in his first year, in a very tough year, in a tough situation that has been his fault, and other things have been a part of their 3-12 years so far, right? But I've never seen throughout the course of the year him shy away from it. But that's the type of stuff that gets you fired. Your record is what you are. You're paid and hired to win football games, not take accountability for losses, because that's not what this is. And so I look at what they did. I thought it was a good comeback that was set up poorly for Mason Rudolph's strengths, right? Because we knew he was going to start. He's a backup quarterback. We know where his ceiling is. The question that we're going to pose to the chat, are you buying or selling the Titans fighting back in the second half? Because what is it for? I mean, you're in a weird situation. You're now 3-12. You're kind of fighting for a better draft position. You're heartstrung because you don't know what to do. Should I be cheering for a loss? Kind of like the Raiders yesterday versus the Jags.
Right.
Oh, Shedeur Sanders, but we're going to win.
Right. Real conflict.
So are you buying or selling the Titans fighting back in the second half and do want to get King VC, lock in and like the show. Make sure you like the show. We appreciate King VC. I feel like every single day he is a real OG on this show.
Right.
Lock in and like the show. So we're going to get to your comments. I'm going to let the comments fill up. I'm going to touch on a little bit of a Christmas gift, and that is A Moment's Peace. AMomentsPeace.com. It's the 23rd. The time is a ticking, okay? You can go to AMomentsPeace.com/Christmas and get a gift card today. It is stocking stuffer. This is kind of the time that guys freak out. Girls freak out. Doesn't really matter. It's like, oh,
guys freak out. Let's be honest.
More guys, but stocking stuffers, right?
That's right.
You forget about those. This is a great stocking stuffer. It is a great gift. You can present it in any form or fashion. It can be for any woman in your life. If you're talking about a massage, if you're trying to get a wife, mom, sister,
grandma,
family member, grandma, it doesn't matter. It's easy. Go to AMomentsPeace.com/Christmas today. All right, Easton, I'm going to let you go to the comment section and see what the chat is saying. Are they buying or selling the valiant comeback that fell short against the Indianapolis Colts yesterday in Indy?
Yeah, the chat is very bearish on this Titans comeback. Selling from the chat here. A couple of buys. Curtis says buying makes the tank look better, but selling the Colts eased off. Selling, it was obvious the Colts let off the gas. Selling, the Colts played a shell D and let up. So I mean, it is. I could throw 1,000 sold, selling onto the screen, but it is all the same. I literally have only seen two buys. So yeah, pretty 90-10 split at the very least here. The people are not buying that as a comeback.
Are you?
So I kind of ran through this on the post-game show solo yesterday, but I want to reiterate. If we are talking about how impressive it was for the Titans to score the 30 points they did to come back, I am selling the fact that it was a hard-fought 30 points, because two people in the comments point, it was obvious that for all but the last touchdown the Titans scored, that last touchdown was a real touchdown. The rest of them, the first touchdown they scored, the first touchdown of the game, real touchdown. The last touchdown, real touchdown. All the touchdowns in between, fake touchdowns, right? Definitely a shell defense. Definitely a lot of dump offs, letting Tajay Spears and Chikakonkwo, who's apparently prime Randy Moss now, get that guy 10 targets a game. They were going crazy, soft underneath stuff, getting 10, 15 yards, and the Colts were happy to let them have it. So that part I'm selling. But what I am buying is the fact that they had the drive and determination to mount the comeback anyways, because it was at one point in the second half, 38-7. The Colts had scored 38 unanswered points. And it was a moment where, I mean, if you were just scrolling Twitter, it was a burn down the building, fold the franchise, fire everybody, start over with a clean slate moment. And I'd imagine, I mean, listen, owners are ultimately just fans with a lot of money for the most part. I'd imagine those emotions were reflective of how Amy Adams-Strunk was feeling sitting in her box.
Wait. Jerry Jones is the general manager of his football team. Right. He picks those players. So you can't just call him a fan, glorified fan, right?
I'm going to call him a glorified fan the most, actually. Yeah, Jerry, give some other smart people a chance to do those jobs. But yeah, like I think that those emotions generally are probably how ownership was also feeling, just natural human emotions there. And the Colts the Titans players in that moment had every opportunity to give up, to phone it in. And this is the thing. This is the primary reason, folks that have been listening to me for the past month. It's the primary reason why I continue to not give up on this team as constructed, the vision of this team, the Callahan regime, is because every chance that the Titans players have had, every moment that I thought, this is where the house of cards caves in, this is where they lose the locker room, this is where the players give up on this coaching staff and the vision of this current team, they proved me wrong. They proved to me that they have not given up. And whether or not that's like smart or not, it can be argued whether or not they should be bought in on the vision of Callahan's team, but they are. I think you can't watch that second half yesterday and say these players have given up, because at 38-7, they're really they did about as good a job as you could possibly do in coming back and almost making that a game. And they still fell short. And the fact that they did it anyways, and they scored 3 or 4 touchdowns there in the second half to make a game out of it. The defense bowed up when it needed to. I think the fact that they had that fight does mean something to me. I think that's meaningful, and that's a buy moment. So there's kind of 2 elements to it for me. I'm buying it a little bit, but I'm also selling it a little bit.
Yeah, you're buying the action when they could taste it, and then once the taste was over, I think I'm selling it because they came back against a bad team. Like, congrats.
Sure.
Like, why didn't they do that against the Commanders? Huh?
They tried. It was just a worse effort. It was a worse effort. I mean, they did make it. They did make it almost a 1-score game at one point, but it was not as close as this one was.
Almost a 1-score game that ends in a final of 42-19.
Yeah,
doesn't count for me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, fair.
I'm selling this. It's just like I'm selling Will Levis, and we had conversations. I do usually do the show on Monday with Austin, and I think this may have been. I don't know if it was a stat that was around the internet of like, oh, Will Levis is turning the corner these last 3 games. Man, he's only thrown so many interceptions, and one of the touchdowns was that trash ass touchdown in the Chargers game to Calvin Ridley at the end of that game that they were done. Right. So most of the second half, the Colts were done. Right. Like, so I'm selling this. The Titans are a very, very bad football team.
Yes, they are.
I don't know. They are not the worst football team in the league. The New York Giants singularly are the worst football team.
Masterful tank from them. And masterful.
Watching yesterday solidifies that against a rookie quarter. I mean, Michael Penix Jr. looked like, Jaden Daniels, to be honest.
They're regular Will Levis in his debut. How about that?
Right. So now, sometimes the worst team doesn't always get the number 1 overall pick. The Giants are trending in that direction at least.
Yeah.
But the Titans are a bottom 3 team. I think they're probably 3 or 2 of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
And they have a quarterback in Mason Rudolph that has enough experience to do stuff like this. But Mason Rudolph will always fall short consistently.
Yep.
That's why he is a backup.
Yep.
And that's okay. Like, Mason Rudolph's job description of his career, when we look back, is supplementing games to win when the starter is out.
Mm-hmm.
If you get an opportunity to play 3 games, can you win 2 or 1 to bridge a gap of a season? That's Mason Rudolph's responsibility. Now he's being thrown into this situation because the Titans are done with their head case starting franchise quarterback Will Levis. They're tired of seeing him. They're done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brian Callahan has now shifted to, we need to win games and I need to prove myself. Mm-hmm. No longer Will Levis. That happened last week mid Bengals game, right? So, like, Mason Rudolph was set up to lose this game. I'm selling it. It means nothing. The Titans are still a bottom 3 team. And Easton, even if they would have won yesterday, they're still a bottom 3 team. Maybe not categorically, but with the eye test, as the playoff committee struggles with, you need that. Like, you need the eye test of
maybe
what
they're a bottom 5 team if they win yesterday, but it's still a top 5 pick. Absolutely. I agree. So do you, you bought and sold, you're trading, you're opening up a full stand. That's right.
I don't know what the Easton's,
my stock brokerage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What singularly are you doing?
So the only thing, I am selling everything besides buying the fact that this team has not given up on their coach, which isn't really the question. I just felt like it was important to bring up because at this point in the season, I care far less about whether they're winning or losing. Are they playing
for their coach, or are they playing for their jobs?
A fair question. I think obviously the answer is both. Like, they're everybody all the time is playing for their jobs, playing for their incentives. There's a selfish element to it. But the way that we see on other teams where people give up. Like, here's the example I used yesterday, Zach. and this is just a me thing. I know people feel differently about this because a lot of people want Callahan fired. The reason why I don't is because for me, the bar to fire a coach in their first year, especially when they clearly don't have a viable NFL quarterback on their roster, is really high. For me, it needs to be a Freddie Kitchens situation. It needs to be a Nathaniel Hackett situation where it is so clear and obvious that this guy stinks, that this guy not only is losing games is one thing, but that he doesn't really affect anything during the week, that his players don't have any faith in him. There's discord in the locker room. You're seeing it in their actions. You're hearing it in the press conferences. And I have not seen that from this team. That's why I am not on that train right now. And that's why I do think there is some value to the way that they play that game yesterday, because I don't think you get to 30 points and make a game of it there at the very, very end if everybody's just playing for themselves and their incentives. I think there has to be a unity element to that. That's how I feel about it.
I get that. Will that stay regardless of the outcome of the last two games?
That's the question, right? I mean,
I'm asking you.
Yeah, I mean, so if I had to guess,
your opinion on the coach, is that the way that it is regardless of the last two games?
Yes, because I think that if they didn't give up yesterday, they aren't going to give up no matter what happens in the last two games, if that makes sense. If they suddenly were to give up and it was obvious, like, he's lost them, then my opinion would change. But I think if they didn't do that yesterday when they were down 38-7 on the road, I don't think it's going to happen against the Jaguars and the Texans. So I think I'm not going to change on Callahan getting a second year. No.
I want to comment and react to that because I have a nuance to it of what I think about Brian Callahan thus far. I think we're similar, maybe not the same. I don't know. Okay. Let's touch on that. But first, going to tell everybody about the Bone and Joint Institute. Don't fumble on your recovery. They've got a state-of-the-art facility. I've been there. I've had my shoulder fixed. We've had numerous people from A to Z, whether they're employees or fans, and they have gone to the Bone and Joint Institute down in Franklin. They've got satellite locations all across Middle Tennessee, which is awesome. They've been a great sponsor for years now. The Doc Talks educate everyone, so don't miss those. That's the Bone and Joint Institute. Great partners, great sponsors. Again, their main hub is down there in Franklin, but they've grown in the last several years. They've got locations peppered all throughout Middle Tennessee. That's the Bone and Joint Institute.
We're also brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Sign up using our bonus code ATOZ Sports today to get up to $1,500 back if your first bet does not cash. We are powered here at A to Z Sports by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas.
All right, JD brings this up. He says, Callie gets fired next year anyways. Get it out of the way now. Here's where I kind of disagree with that, but Brian Callahan has to do one thing that I don't know if he'll be able to do.
Okay.
I agree with you, Easton. Regardless of the last two games, I probably don't fire Brian Callahan. I take a long, hard look at Rand and that relationship. I take a long, hard look at the front office and what changes. Obviously, coaching staff changes need to happen. You can't run it back at 3-15. God knows if that's how it's going to end, probably, or 3-14.
They're gonna find an extra game to lose somewhere.
They may. I still probably don't fire Brian Callahan. I think you spent all these years with the player, coach, defensive guy, and now you finally have the offensive-minded guru, for lack of a better term. It's more from 3 wins. It's not a guru. Here's what Brian Callahan has struggled with in year one. His leadership is not up to par for an NFL head coach, in my opinion. I think he has to take a pretty big leap in the offseason to earn the trust of the locker room, the ownership group, the fan base, that he can lead men. Some of this is a product of who he replaced, which is Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel was a leader of men. He had his fair share of problems. Don't get me wrong, right? But when you walked in the room, damn it, your ass cheeks got tight and you made sure you did your job.
Yeah.
When Brian Callahan walks into the room, you don't even recognize it, to be honest, in my opinion. He has to bring that aura and grow into that aura. And that's because they're polar opposites, right? I think Brian Callahan can find that in between. He's never going to be Vrabel. That's not what I want him to be. That's not what he wants him to be. That's not what the Titans fan base wants him to be. But to be honest, Easton, I saw through that BS rant last week. I didn't have a chance to react to this. The whole soft stuff, I mean, I didn't feel it in my bones, to be honest.
Okay.
I didn't feel it.
Okay.
And that's me. That may not be. It was received very well by national media.
It was.
Probably by the locker room because he was supporting his players. But I think being a head coach and being a leader is an it factor. I think Brian Callahan probably has a ceiling to that it factor. His offensive mind is greater than the it factor of leadership. And that's why he was hired.
Right.
But can he, over the offseason, work on that and grow as a natural leader? When he speaks, people listen. Does he hold everyone accountable in practice, in the locker room, outside, right? Like, I do think that there's room for improvement. That's why I would not fire him now.
Right.
I've seen enough. Now, to JD's point, as we bring this back out, Callie's going to get fired next year anyway. Get out of the way. He won't get fired if he brings the level of leadership up.
Right.
And his offensive prowess, which why he was hired, really kind of comes to fruition with the new quarterback and new players. That's my 2 cents.
As Max points out in the comments here, Vrabel was an Old Testament kind of guy, and that absolutely is
and you don't need to be that.
Correct. And if you're Brian Callahan, if you try to be that, I mean, you're going to make a fool of yourself. You're going to make a fool because it's not who you are. Players see through this BS very easily. Fans are going to see through that level of BS because it's very clear that's not who you are. So this is my question to you, Zach. You want to see a higher level of leadership from him. But we know he's not a Vrabel type. And so you want him to still manage to somehow be a guy that walks into the room and demands all the oxygen. So what does that look like? What do you think the difference is between Brian
all of
Callahan?
The oxygen? Let me be clear.
Okay.
Vrabel demanded all of the oxygen.
Which was part of the problem.
Correct.
Right.
And that's why I don't think anybody wants, I don't think he can, right? He doesn't have the capacity. That's not the right move. He just has to level up as a leader.
Okay.
Right? And
But what does that look like? Like, how does he become a Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell type where they are the offensive mind, they're more soft-spoken, but they're still a leader of men that demands your attention when you walk in the room? Is it just success? Is it just winning games?
Well, that definitely helps, right?
Sure.
It's confidence.
Okay.
When you ask a girl out on a date and she says yes, you start walking around with your shoulders a little higher, right? Nobody told one to walk with their shoulders higher. Nobody properly, put something back on their back to make them do that. It just naturally happens because she said yes. It's the same versus she says, get lost, scumbag. You kind of, your shoulders are down.
Yeah.
That's the beauty and the unique part about things that there is not tangible evidence on how to attain them. It just naturally, organically happens.
Okay.
And Brian Callahan is going to have to find that on top of wins, on top of some stuff, on top of experience. Easton, Brian Callahan is better today than he was in training camp. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
But you just know when somebody has it. And I think, look, first job, he's never done this before. There's learning curves. I'm not hating on him, but I'm also looking and saying, this is what he's got to do to stay here on top of winning more than 3 games.
Right. I want to bring back up that comment we continue to go back to, the idea that he is getting fired next year, so why not just go ahead and get it over with? Kind of a different conversation, but I do think this bears bringing up. From a long-term team building standpoint, it's important to me that if and when this regime comes to an end, it's a clean divorce, right? We see the best situations typically are when a GM and a head coach, and if you can marry the trifecta, it's gorgeous. A GM, a head coach, and the quarterback are brought in together. Look at Washington, for example. You're not mixing and matching, not having arranged marriages in that way. The way that this quarterback offseason is currently shaping up, the very limited options that they have, the very imperfect options that they have, barring getting up to, a place in the draft where they are going to have their pick of the litter, and even then, there being a guy in this draft that they really want to marry themselves to, I'm not sure it would necessarily be wise to have this mindset of, well, he's probably going to get fired next year anyways, so go ahead and fire him. Because you fire him and then you bring somebody else in to a really bad, like a really difficult conundrum at the quarterback position that's probably set up for them to fail in their first year as a head coach, trying to do all the logistical things of becoming a head coach, figuring it out, and we got to go find a quarterback, and our options really suck. So I think you give Callahan this opportunity to get his guy in a bad group of options, see what he can do with it, and then if it doesn't work out, you clean slate into 2026. That's how I feel about it.
Here's what I think is probably going to happen.
Okay.
Brian Callahan has dealt with the head case young quarterback that has no experience and it didn't work. Right guy, wrong guy,
swing the whole other way.
I think probably to save jobs, because that's what you're doing, right?
Yes.
You said, wouldn't you do anything? You finally got an opportunity to do some. Wouldn't you do anything to save your job? I think probably they target a veteran quarterback, a Tannehill, lower ceiling, he doesn't
Derek
have a
Carr, come on down.
Probably target one of those guys in the offseason. And what they bet on is that they go from, 3-14 to a 7-win team next year.
Right.
And they develop the Rank Carthon's first 2 first-round picks, which is the left side of the offensive line. And if that improves, then you're in a completely different situation in year 3, where if you've won 7 games, now the expectation in year 3 is to make the playoffs.
Right.
And you can choose to draft a quarterback, do something like that, and maintain your veteran, whoever that is. I mean, there's a lot of speculation in this scenario.
Right.
But I think it makes the most sense to save jobs. That's what I would do.
Yes. And the number one job in the NFL, right, is to keep the job. And I think that if you are building a game plan from a coaching staff standpoint of how do we stick around and continue to responsibly develop this team, unless they are just huge Shadur Sanders fans, which I think is fair personally.
Well, you have to be.
Right. And you are in position to get him somehow, or they God forbid they happen to be huge Cam Ward fans or whatever it may be. Then you probably go that route of a guy because we got to remember, this is a guy that came from last year finding real success with Jake Browning, right? That style of Mason Rudolph-y quarterback, but a higher ceiling than Mason, somebody that maybe can better execute the offense and be less turnover prone. That level of guy, I think that Brian Callahan has a lot of faith in his scheme, his ability to get guys open, and you just need somebody back there that can have a high completion percentage and get the ball to the playmakers. I think that he will bet on somebody that he thinks that can do that next year, to kind of bridge them to win 7 or 8 games and get to 2026.
Here's the problem: pressure. If the Titans are the 2nd, 3rd pick, the pressure of you guys need a quarterback.
Right.
Why are you not? You're not going to draft a quarterback?
Sure. I think this year mitigates it though, because everybody seems to be I think everybody understands how bad this quarterback class is. And I think it'll only be the people that really don't understand the draft class who will say that. Because if you really understand this draft class, you can understand passing on any of these guys. I mean, Zach, this quarterback class has the chance to be a 2022 group where only one guy goes in the first round. It's later than we all think. And then everybody else goes in the third round. And we spend all April, because the media has to, we hype up the quarterbacks. Oh, Malik Willis, he's going to be a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick. And then we all look stupid on draft day because what we knew from the beginning in November and December is that these guys stink.
I don't disagree with you. And in that case, that's the benefit of the scenario that we talked about.
Exactly.
Is you take the best player,
maybe Travis Hunter, get Abdul Carter. Yeah. Rock and roll.
You take a guy that's going to help your team for 4 or 5 years, and you go the Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, Ryan Tannehill route again, and you save your job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's better, but it's not what the ownership is looking for, because to win a Super Bowl, I would ask you this question. We don't do this show together. This is the first time we've done this show, so we're learning a lot about each other how we think. To win a Super Bowl, do you think you can win a Super Bowl with a Sam Darnold, Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill? I mean, the results are in, and the answer is no. But do you think that can happen?
So I mean, like different players, very different situation. Like I feel very differently right now about Sam Darnold than I do a Matt Ryan, as I do a Kirk Cousins, for example. I think I do believe that it is possible to win with a guy that is the very, very, I talk all the time on the show about tractor quarterbacks and trailer quarterbacks, right? Guys that you win because of, who are pulling the team, and guys that you win with because they're being carried by the team, right?
Good
and
analogy.
I think that you can win a Super Bowl with the very, very best trailer quarterbacks, but it's very hard and you have to get lucky. So typically you need a guy that is going to be pulling your team. It is far easier. And if you're building a team, like a team building philosophy standpoint, absolutely you're looking for a trailer or a tractor guy at all costs.
What does it then become? What's the cost of that, though? And cost as in, does it then become a preventative measure to find your tractor guy?
Right. I mean, so that's where the rubber meets the road with philosophy and reality, right? Because if coaches and GMs had ultimate job security, which they super do not in the NFL, the best, like on paper, the best philosophy, people that work in the draft, and this is kind of my opinion too, it's probably best practice at this point in the NFL to draft a quarterback every year, no matter who your quarterback is. Just constantly be swinging the bat at quarterback, because the upside of hitting on a guy is so monumental compared to the upside of hitting on any other position that you should, unless you literally have Patrick Mahomes, you should always, if like Matt Stafford's your quarterback, don't care, draft a quarterback. Jalen Hurts your quarterback, don't care, draft a quarterback. Just keep drafting quarterback. Of course, you can't do that because it looks bad and you have ownership that's looking over your shoulder.
Didn't they just do that?
And yes. And again, like the point is that quarterbacks don't hit very often. And so you have to, but that's my point, is that you do it over and over. They don't hit because the quarterback hit rate is so low and you don't have the security to keep doing it over and over. But to your ultimate question of what's the cost of it, if you weren't trying to keep your job, the effort should be at all costs. But you can't sell out that way unless you're just willing to burn a very bright light and go out in a year. Because if you push your chips in on finding your tractor guy, no matter what, picks be damned, trade capital be damned, rest of your roster be damned, it might work and you might get your guy, but it also might fail spectacularly and you're going to be out of a job.
This is the wild puzzle. While all, and in this scenario, Brian Callahan growing as a coach, right? Learning. And Rand Carthon's the same way. He didn't have all this GM experience prior to coming to the Titans, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's having to learn, and he's having to avoid the mistakes John Robinson's made. So like all of these things you've got to kind of fit together, but you can look at history, especially within the franchise, of what to do, what not to do, what the fans want and what the fans don't want. And then the ultimate X factor, which is what wins games.
Right.
That if you win 3 games this year 7 games next year and make the playoffs the following year, that's probably for Brian Callahan, that's the most ideal situation that you could possibly have and
Absolutely.
still have a job. You'd sign up for that every day of the week, regardless of the players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're Brian Callahan and Rand Carthen, you're hoping that Amy Adams-Strunk's BFF Sheila Ford up there in Detroit, who she hangs out with and is reportedly talks shop with all the time, you're hoping the way that Sheila Ford has gone about things with the Lions is rubbing off on Amy Adams-Strunk, because that's exactly what the Lions did, right? Dan Campbell comes in, they go 3-13, and then they win 7 games the next year, and then they become perennial contenders the following year. So if you're Brian, you're probably whispering these sweet nothings in Amy's ear, like, hey, look at the way that they did it. Trust the process. Don't get antsy. Don't make any rash decisions, because we can do this too. You just have to give us time.
Well, the other thing that helps Brian Callahan, then we'll move on to the age game. I like Brian Callahan. Like when I spoke to him at the Titans dinner before the season, like I came away being like, I like that guy. He's down to earth. Like you can actually have a conversation with him. Like Mike Vrabel, I've talked to that guy, and that's a different experience.
Different guy.
And hurt him in the long run, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I said I'm willing to give Brian Callahan more opportunity to grow as a leader, because you hired him for something else. It would be a shame to just rip a Band-Aid off. He's shown enough, to your point, regardless of the last 2 games, to keep his job.
I think so.
I agree. Can he continue to take the steps and we can see him turn a corner? That's going to have to happen in the offseason. Is he willing to make the coaching changes? Can their special teams get better?
It has. I know, but I know nobody cares. I know nobody cares.
But from what?
I mean, for the past month, their special teams haven't been a problem. Nobody cares because it's been everything else been a dumpster fire.
From the worst in the league
to average. Yeah. I'm just saying. Are
you okay with average?
Based on where they came from this year, yes, I am. Yeah.
See, I think
that's real growth. I mean, if you go from 32 to 16 in a season.
I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but what changes? Brian Callahan's going to have to make changes. He's going to be forced to. It's not a bill that you can sell to the public.
Agreed.
So we don't have time to do this.
You're right.
But he is going to have to figure out what changes he's willing to make. I think the easiest change as a full body of work is to get a new special teams coordinator.
From an optics standpoint, yes, that is the thing that you feel like you have to do.
That's part of playing the game.
Oh, I know. I'm just pointing out that if and when he does it, it is an optics move.
There are scapegoats and everything.
That's right.
That's just life. So, look, I think this is a valuable conversation. We covered a lot more stuff than
a lot of ground today.
When we talked about in our pre-show conversation. A solid show. Now let's put you to the test. I've got a curveball. I think this is a tough one. I did this based on where I got to, playing a little bit of the Kevin Bacon game. But now it is the age game, and that is brought to you. All of our end of show topics are brought to you by Wilson County Hyundai. Visit WilsonCountyHyundai.com right there in Lebanon. Payne Bonin and his team are trusted. If you're in the market for a brand new car, a used car, a Hyundai, I've had a Hyundai before. Absolutely love Hyundai. My Hyundai Sonata, beautiful. Car mileage, I mean, just experience, look, it is outstanding. They've got plenty of makes and models, your perfect make and model on the lot right now. That's WilsonCountyHyundai.com. All right, age game. We're going to make this somewhat quick and easy for you in the chat because we've been running long just because this is our first true on-air conversation. Top quarterbacks for the Indianapolis Colts, Johnny Unitas, not Indianapolis, but Baltimore. Peyton Manning, you would say. Andrew Luck, you would say. Gone too soon from the league, you would say. In the spirit of the college football playoff, a guy who was an ambassador for college football was Andrew Luck's father, Oliver Luck. How old is Oliver Luck, Andrew Luck's father?
Oliver Luck, the one-time commissioner of the XFL, I believe.
Yes.
I'm familiar with Oliver. If he is Andrew's dad, Andrew's probably, gone too soon. So I'd say Andrew right now probably, is he Ryan Tannehill's age? Is he 36-ish? So his father is at least 20 years older, maybe more, 25 years, 30 years older. I'll say Oliver Luck is... Oh, man. I'll say Oliver Luck is 62.
62. You locking it in? Final A to Z?
Locking in 62.
All right. Easton's going final 62. Well, I think we have a brand new winner. You've won before, right?
Am I 2 for 2 now?
You've won before, correct?
I've only won. I've done this one time and I got it right.
What was that one? Do you remember?
It was Bud Adams. Bud Adams' posthumous age.
How old was Bud Adams? Do you remember?
102, I think.
When he died? Or
no, today. Sorry, not what he is now past death was the question from Austin. What he would be today if he's still alive was the question. Yeah, I don't know, but I got it right.
I think that was the first time Austin had ever been on this side of asking questions of the age game. We don't do that. It's not Tales of the Crypt.
How old? Well, if you were gonna make me go today, Zach, I was gonna really screw you over. I was gonna ask you how old Santa Claus is. The answer is 1,744 years for reference.
I did ask Austin one time how old Louis the 16th was.
Well, okay, so we do this around here.
But age of death, not like what he would be today.
Oh, okay.
So
wait, so hang on. Did I get this right?
You did not get this right. Curtis got this right on the first guess. 64. This was the singular first guess of the chat.
All over Curtis.
At 64.
Maybe Curtis knows Oliver. Maybe he was at his birthday party.
Oliver Luck right there. So congratulations to Curtis.
Darn, close.
And I had time to let's see here. We had some good guesses, but honestly, they didn't matter because Curtis
literally dominated. The first guess we got in the chat was the right one.
Right. We had a ton of different
guesses. That's astonishing. Wow.
But the first one was 64 and the first one was correct.
Welcome to the board, Curtis.
Curtis, brand new to the age game board. You see Curtis down there, bottom right corner. We're trying to get to 6-time champions. Way to go, Curtis. The age game leaderboard. Now Curtis is on the board. Put him on the board. That is Oliver Luck being 64 years old. We do, before we officially get out of here, did Amnesia, and we apologize to Amnesia, so we got to give him credit where credit is due. Sure. It is a super chat. So he's paying to play. I think this was earlier in the conversation, so you're now saying it's possible that Levis's poor production could be on the coaching staff. I think, isn't that what everyone is trying to figure out, is who is to blame?
Sure.
I think looking at last week, Will Levis and his actions on the field were to blame. That's why he's no longer playing.
2 weeks, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, my pushback was when he was playing better, he wasn't playing outstanding.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
And I'm not saying that's all on him, but
it was good trailer quarterback play. He was not pulling the team.
Jaden Daniels is.
Yes. He is.
You know?
Yeah.
He's playing good enough, great enough to win games. And I think in these quarterback scenarios, you've got to do that or the coaches are going to move on. NFL, not for long.
That's right.
And I think Levis is a product of that. So congratulations to Curtis. Congratulations to us, Easton and myself, getting through a great Monday show. First conversation we've had on air. I thought we covered a lot of ground, and we didn't win any more Titans games today, but maybe we solved some future problems for this franchise.
Well, I think we did, and I think we proved who needs Austin anyways. We've got it. It's not a big deal.
There you go. Cruise control right
That's
here
right.
on a Monday. We thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like the show before you go. Subscribe to the channel. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
This is a wonderful time of year. There's a lot of football on. There's NBA tonight. Get in on the action with BetMGM and enjoy some family time and maybe some time off if you're able to do that. So like the show before you go. We appreciate each and every one of you. Adios.